Hi, and earlier this year a World of Warcraft cookbook came out. Now I was going to get this, I'm very much into cooking myself. But when I came around to getting it a few weeks ago, went onto Amazon, sold out in the UK. So rather than keep hunting it down or trying to find my Kindle charger to just get it on Kindle edition, I thought about it myself. I thought, well, I can cook to a reasonable fashion. Why don't I just try doing some recipes myself? So I had a flick through the old cookbook online and came across some recipes I thought I might like to do. And I'm going to do this as a bit of a series going into 2017. So to start the ball rolling at the end of 2016, I thought I would begin with beer basted boar ribs, which you can get from a quest if you're on the Alliance side at any rate in Dunmorrow. I'm not quite sure about Horde, if it even exists on the Horde side. So what I started off doing here is just getting the ribs, some pork ribs, and put them in a roasting pan and then just marinate them in beer, a couple of cans of beer here. Now, there are actually health benefits to marinating meat in beer, but I won't go through those. I'll leave that in case I decide to start a science channel at some point, which I have thought about before. But needless to say, what you want to do, a couple of cans of beer in here. Now, there are types of beer you want to sort of think about. Your lagers are not very good. They don't have much taste. So once you've sort of made the sauce and everything, you're not going to have anything left. You need something with a bit of body. You need an ale, basically. Now, I'm using quite a pale ale here. This is all right. It's not too overpowering. You can use darker ones. You can use stouts. They're okay as well. But you get a much stronger flavour from them, which is not to everyone's taste. So I've just got some pale ale here. And I'm going to leave that in there for an hour. An hour is a good amount of time. If you leave it in a lot longer, let's say you do it overnight, you can get some discoloration of the meat, but it's no real harm. I don't think there's any major problem with leaving it in too long, but an hour is the recommended amount of time for marinating beer. So after the hour, what I do is I just take that off, I drain it, and what I then do is just on the meat side, just season it a little bit. Now, I completely forgot to record while I was doing this, so it's already seasoned. You'll just have to take my word for it that it was done expertly. Now, it's up to you what you season it with, or even if you season it at all. Some people prefer to season the ribs as they're marinating it. I just use some ground black pepper, some oregano, and some ground chili flakes. But it's up to you. Some salt and pepper is a typical seasoning, and that'd be fine as well. Or you could use nothing. We're going to baste it in beer barbecue sauce later. So then what we do is we put that on some foil, meat side down, and then we fold it up into a nice little parcel. And then put that into an oven at 110 degrees Celsius, which is round about 230 Fahrenheit. Now that'll need to go into the oven for a good 3.5 hours for a rack this big. If it's bigger, then you might want to increase that cooking time. So once you've done that, then we want to start the barbecue sauce. Now you don't have to start it immediately. It's not going to take 3.5 hours, but it can take quite a while. I would certainly do it with an hour and a half left to go, but you can do it longer and slower with this way as well, which is what I prefer. So I got started onto it straight away. So what you need is a large pan and put the beer that you were marinating the porks in into that pan. Then you want to add in your spices for that. Now, different people use different things at this point. I think some fairly standard things are chili powder. I put a good couple of tablespoons of chili powder in there. A lot of people like garlic. I'm not so keen on garlic. I don't cook with garlic that much. But if you're going to, you can put some garlic in there. If it's going to be fresh garlic, you should mince it first. Or you can just put some garlic powder in. That's straightforward. Mustard. If you've got mustard powder, you can just put mustard powder in. I don't use mustard powder. Depends how spicy you like it. I like things quite spicy. So I used a couple of spoons of English mustard. But you could use Dijon mustard or honey mustard, something like that. It's a much subtler taste. Paprika is usually fairly popular as well. I put some of that in. I forgot to put it in at the point you're watching here, but I did add it later, so a tablespoon or two of paprika. And you can just use standard paprika or smoked paprika or half and half. That's up to you as well. In addition, there are a couple of other things you should always add as well. Vinegar, usually cider vinegar is the standard thing here. I don't have any cider vinegar at the moment. I used white wine vinegar. That's as good. And then you want something sweet to balance it out. I just put some brown sugar in here. Brown sugar is fairly standard. Some people add treacle as well, or golden syrup, something like that. Just something sweet. And then what I did is bring it to the boil. Now, what you want to do is to reduce that quite a lot down. You want to get it to about a quarter of as much as I've got here. Now, you can either do that on high heat and do it relatively quickly, or you can do it on lower heat like I'm going to do here, because I've got a long time for these ribs to cook. So then what I did, once it had been reduced down nicely, I added in some tomato puree. Now, you could, if you don't have tomato puree, add in some tomato ketchup. But I just added tomato puree in there. That will help to thicken it up. So give that a swirl. I started to give it a stir in and then just gave up. Whenever you're adding anything into like a sauce or a stock like this, a whisk is much the easier way to go. So whisk that in and then carry on with that on a simmer for, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. You'll notice it'll thicken up quite a bit. Now, once the ribs have been in the oven for about 3.5 hours, take them out, open up the parcel. Now, what you need to do then is to take the ribs away from that foil parcel. I don't necessarily want the juices going all over the pan because it's not a problem. It just means worse to clean up later. So I tried to sort of hold as much of that in the foil as possible. Put that to one side. When it's cooled down, just scrunkle it up and put it in the bin. Now, the ribs now want to go on the rack. It could just be a roasting pan. There doesn't necessarily need to be a rack unless you've got lots of juices in there. If you've got no juices, then it's fine on the bottom of a roasting pan. Meat side up this time. Now what we're going to do is brush that with the barbecue sauce that we've made. So give it an application there. Now there's several things you can do here. I'm going to put it back in the oven. I'm going to increase the temperature to about 150 degrees Celsius, which I think is about 300 Fahrenheit. Do check that. But you've got other options at this point as well. You could have used this as some sort of preparation for a barbecue itself, and you could just finish them off on the grill. Or you could put it under the broiler. It's entirely up to you. I'm just putting it back in the oven for 15 minutes to begin with, and then I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to put another application of barbecue sauce on. This point I'm going to make sure it's all nice and evened out, so we don't have like puddles of it anywhere. So make it a nice even coating, back in for 10 to 15 minutes, and then out, and then it's done. And there we've got beer basted boar ribs with some nice barbecue sauce that you can use on other things later on. Nice and tender after being in the oven for like over 4 hours as well. So as I say, I intend to do some more of these in a series through 2017, preferably getting a couple a month done. That was my first ever go at trying to film some cooking, by the way, so hopefully it wasn't too bad. If anyone's got any suggestions, I have gone through the recipe book and I've come up with some that should last me some months to do that sound interesting. But if anyone does have any suggestions from the World of Warcraft recipe book, in-game of course, then you can put your comments down below. I might agree to it, as long as it meets certain criteria. Criteria number 1. It has to be interesting enough to be worth doing. Some of the recipes, it has to be said in World of Warcraft, are just a thing. It just has one ingredient in the thing, because it's not too complicated. That's probably going to be a little bit dull. The second one is it's actually got ingredients I like. Now, you wouldn't necessarily believe it, but I'm quite a fussy eater. But of course, you don't know what I like and what I don't. So just put it down, but I will ignore any that have ingredients in that I'm just not going to like. And the third criteria is it has to be something that will actually match the food as it's supposed to be in game, because obviously it's a World of Warcraft cookery. But anyway, hope you found this interesting and enjoyable. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share for more content. Until next time, I'll see you later.